Thanks. Good evening and welcome to the June 15th regular board meeting. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Pickle-Antonio?
Here.
Mrs. Mooring? Mrs. Coates?
Here.
Manley?
Here.
And if you'll all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve minutes from the May 4th board workshop meeting, the May 16th Finance and Facility Committee meeting, the May 18th regular board meeting, and the May 23rd special board meeting? Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Thank you, Mr. Manley. Any corrections to the minutes at all? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Pickle-Antonio?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. We are on the recognition part of our agenda right now, and I think I am going to call up Missy Grimmett. You can go over to the podium, and if you could not adjust the microphone, it should be set and ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. So thank you all for having me to join in this recognition. As a coordinator of our preschool program in Gahanna, I am here to share with you the prestigious honor our program recently received, which was a 5-star Step Up to Quality rating from the state of Ohio. Yes. So I wanted to share a little bit about what Step Up to Quality is and how we obtain that rating and what high quality looks like in our preschool program. So Step Up to Quality is a 5-star quality program, a rating and improvement system administered by the Ohio Department of Education and the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. And it was originated through the federal Early Childhood Race to the Top, Early Learning Challenge Grant to improve that school readiness for children. So how we obtain ratings include they're awarded to programs that are committed to 1, continuous improvement, 2, the continuing education of our teachers and staff, the use of learning and development standards to support our children's learning, and relationship building with families and communities. Through this process, we had state specialists both at Goshen Lane locations as well as Clark Hall locations conduct on-site visits. They included observations of our teachers, they reviewed our lesson plans, they reviewed our curriculum, evaluations, all of our goals, and identified for a continuous improvement. What high quality learning looks like, or those early learning experiences at our level. High quality early learning experience provide the basis for the brain's development and directly impact that success for children in kindergarten and beyond. I thought this was really interesting. A child has approximately 1,892 days from the time that he or she is born until they reach kindergarten. So children who have those high quality learning experiences are better prepared for school life and are more likely to have successful futures. I wanted to share now a few examples of how we produced high quality learning experience with our students this year and what we're really proud of for just this school year. So in the area of relationship building with families and communities, we took pride really into this year really looking at our school-wide communication system. So we provided Class Dojo as like a common platform for all of our families to be able to access, and for us, our teachers, to be able to share videos, to capture some of those moments for our kiddos that might be a little bit more challenging to see, through a report card or, through a picture or whatnot. So that has been really positive feedback from our families for implementing that. This year we've held our first student club. It was called the Caring Cubs Club, and our littlest students are doing kind gestures for the community. And I think the last one they did, it was Valentine's cards for our senior citizens, which they really enjoyed doing, and so did the senior citizens. A couple areas that we really focused on were developing family fun nights for our families to come in and really share and showcase how we are providing those play-based experiences and those learning experiences in a fun and engaging way. And then another way that we've really worked with our families is establish some of those intentional opportunities for our families to connect with one another. So we've established a lot of play dates at the park over the course of the school year. In the area of use of learning and development standards to support children's learning, I'm really excited about our growth data that we saw both observationally as well as more formally. So with our literacy data and our math data, all of our students grew. I'll share with you just in our 3-4 age range students in the area of literacy in the fall, we had 88% students proficient, 9% monitor, and 3% intervention. And in the spring, we increased that to 92% proficient, 4% monitor, and 4% intervention needed just for our younger kiddos there. And then with math, I'll share a 4 or 5 grade level. In the fall, we had about 15.6% of our kiddos proficient, 25% monitor, and 59.4 in the intervention needed. And we increased that to, in the spring, about 51% proficient, 28% monitor, and 21% intervention needed. So we're showing a lot of progress with our early intervention and just that, again, that high quality learning experiences for our students. Just more of an observational data because our preschool program is composed of half students with disabilities and half peer models. One of our teachers reported that all of her students were able to learn how to use a functional communication system in order to be able to replace negative behaviors and to functionally communicate with others just with those basic wants and needs, which is a huge celebration that you might not capture through a data system. And then one other observation that a teacher reported was that just thinking about our kids are coming in, they never learned school, and it took them about 3 months to actually build trust with a student in order for them to have and be able to learn. And I think for her that was a huge accomplishment, a huge celebration so that they could engage and feel safe and comfortable at school. And then the other area that we really are proud of is just that continuous improvement and continuing education of our teachers. So one of the things that we're really looking on at our preschool level is continuing our learning about equity and access. So we did a school-wide book study this year about Don't Look Away, embracing anti-bias classrooms. So we really started to identify some barriers that we have and really started to look at how we can support the diversity of our school community. And just, again, starting to have those conversations about continued support for our students, families, and our community. And then the last one, just to celebrate, is just as a preschool staff, we focused about being all in this year. So this year we were really focused on setting those core values for our staff, which included our staff, our students, and our families, and developed commitments in order to make sure that we are agreeing to create that best environment for our students and our staff to feel like they belong. So we are proud to be recognized for this high quality of care that we're providing in Gahanna, and I invite each of you to please come and see all of the high quality learning experiences that we have here with our children. And I just thank you for your continued support for our preschool children here in Gahanna. So, yep. Thank you. Have any questions I should say before?
Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Mrs. Mooring.
How many preschools are recognized by the state?
Oh gosh, that is a great question that I don't know that I have the answer for you. I can't share that. I don't know. I can find out for you though. Yeah.
Yeah, Gahanna, have we been recognized before? I don't
We have,
remember.
yes. So there is a annual review process. So
Uh-huh.
every 3 years we're up for another evaluation. So we had to get both locations as us recognized through Step Up to Quality this year since we moved 3 of our classrooms to Goshen Lane.
Okay.
So,
Any
5
other-
stars last time as well, yes.
That's wonderful. Any other
Thank you,
questions?
Sue, for thinking about that.
Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much. Yeah, congratulations
Thank
to you and all of the staff, and thank you so much for everything that everybody does for the kiddos every day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so we are on board reports, I think. Right? Yes. Mrs. Mooring, I think I have you up first, sorry, with a report out from Finance and Facilities.
that button back. On Tuesday, the 13th, we had a Finance and Facilities meeting. We had a short agenda, 2 items. Each month, we have an update on our Phase 2 Master Facility Plan, and we covered a lot of the progress. I mean, we've had, we were able to see completed on Blacklick Elementary, and we're close on High Point. There's doing some site work there, but internally there's punch list. As well at the Blacklick Athletic Facility. The tennis courts are ready to be used, we heard, and so lots of good work going on there. As well with Middle School East, the walls are going up on the sides, and the roof is not far along, or not far away, so that will be exciting, as well as the new high school, the pad, and I'm not going to say the right words, but the supports that go in the ground to support the building are in process of being completed. So a lot of good things and very little to not negligible monetary changes from last month to this month. And then we had a review of our monthly financial statements, and our treasurer will be covering that a little later. And that was it. This was a short meeting. Everybody rejoiced when we adjourned just after 7 o'clock. That's all.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. I have a brief legislative update. Well, maybe not brief, but I'll try to be as concise as I can be. So the main thing that is still continuing to occupy most of the attention and time of the legislature, as it should, is the budget. The Senate's version of the budget was passed out of the Senate today, actually, and it is scheduled for a concurrence vote in the House next week on Wednesday. And the expectation is, so just, I guess, to explain what that all means, the way, and I know I've done this before, so I'll try to do it real quick. The way that the budget process works, the governor introduces an executive budget. First, it goes over to the House, where they introduce an actual piece of legislation that is the budget bill. It goes through their process in the House, and then ultimately the House, after doing a number of weeks of hearings, comes up with their plan for the budget, and they make their modifications to the budget bill and pass a version of the budget out of the House. Then it goes over to the Senate, where there are more hearings that take place in the Senate. Senate then introduced their version of the budget and actually introduced an amended omnibus amendment, basically an amended version of the budget on June 14th. That was yesterday. And then that version of the Senate's bill passed out of the Senate today. It goes back over to the House. The House is essentially asked, do you agree with what the Senate did? The expectation is that they are going to not concur in the Senate's version. And so then it'll go into what is called conference committee. The way that conference committee works is that there will be 3 representatives from the House, 3 from the Senate. It will include, of those 6 individuals, 2 of them will be the chairs of both the House Finance Committee and the Senate Finance Committee. So Representative Edwards, who was the chair of the House Finance Committee, and Senator Matt Dolan, who was the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, will be part of that conference committee. And then there will be 4 other 2 from the House, 2 from the Senate as part of the conference committee. I should have said the budget bill vote was voted out of the Senate on a party line vote. It was 24/7 vote. It was a straight party line vote. The Senate's version of the budget is significantly different than the House's version in a number of ways, but also in ways that very much impact public education. Let me explain, I guess, the rest of the process first, and then I'll explain just in as brief terms as I can what the difference is between the Senate and the House version as it's related to public education. So after the concurrence vote that happens next Wednesday, assuming that it goes to conference committee, those meetings will be scheduled pretty quickly. The goal will be to get the budget to the governor by the end of the month. conference committee meetings are public meetings. However, they look really different than lots of other meetings that are committee meetings in the House and the Senate. You can go and watch them on the Ohio Channel or in person, but you will find that typically what happens is that they call the meeting to order and then they adjourn it pretty quickly. Most of the conversation that happens in conference committee is behind closed doors, and we won't really get a peek at what's happening until whatever they agree to, whatever deals get made, happens. And then it'll go over to the governor, and because it is a budget bill, the governor does have the ability to line item veto things that the governor disagrees with. The governor does not have the ability to put anything back into the budget bill. So for example, things that he had in his executive budget, he can't add, that were removed, he can't add those back in, but line item veto thing. So that's the process part of it. One thing that I really wanted to note substantively about the budget is related to school funding. So the Senate's budget proposes to increase voucher funding by $181.5 million more than the House version, and proposes to decrease K-12 traditional public school funding, which is about 80%, serves about 80% of students in the state, by $245.6 million as compared to the House proposal. Specifically, the Senate maintained the updated fiscal year 2022 base cost inputs that are in the Fair School Funding Plan, and this is really in the weeds, but I'm just going to say it. They modified the capacity calculation, which is the state and local share, by eliminating the per pupil median federal adjusted gross income. That change has two effects. It will cause a reduction in the state share of funding, and it will increase the local share. And it also puts a lot more volatility into the formula. So everything that the Fair School Funding Plan was designed to eliminate, it kind of adds back into the formula. So the formula will no longer be predictable and equitable. The main point that I want to make to us tonight is, I don't know if you saw it, the email that came from OSBA today or not, but they are strongly urging every public school district to send a letter to the House Speaker. They provided a template to us. It is my recommendation that we write a letter and put it on district letterhead signed by each of us as board members to Speaker Stevens. I have the template that they provided. I'm happy to get that draft circulated to us. If everybody agrees that we should do that. I think I think it is critical that he received that letter from all of the school districts as they are suggesting. I'd be happy at another time, outside of here, if anyone wants more details about things, I'm happy to explain it. OSBA did send an updated email to all of us today. Sounds like okay, it's back on. A pretty good explanation along with, I think, a 2-page document full of talking points. So the other thing that we should be doing is reaching out to our own state representative and state senator. I've already with our state representative, and I feel confident that she understands how the budget impacts us. There were, just in case anyone didn't see it, there were actual simulations of the Senate version of the budget and the House version of the budget, and it does actually impact us by a significant dollar amount, those two different versions of the budget. I'm not just talking about theoretical things, it's actual dollars to us that matter. I have not yet reached out to our state senator. She did vote with the Senate Republican majority to pass the Senate version of the budget. I plan to reach out to her anyway and do my best to try to make the points to her about how their version of the budget would impact us. And then I just want to briefly touch on a couple other pieces of legislation.
Question
Oh, sure.
on that,
Sorry.
if that's okay.
Yes.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead.
So just for my learning, So if it goes to the governor and the governor vetoes that, can he veto, because I think you were saying he can veto line items, but if he vetoes that decrease and increase to vouchers, then what happens? Does it resort back to the House budget or current budget standards?
So I think I should have probably been more clear. He does have the ability to line item veto, but if he struck through those provisions, there would be no mechanism for funding for this year. And I'm not sure then actually what would happen. I'd have to think about that. I don't expect that to be one of the things that is up for consideration for a veto, regardless of how it turns out. Yes. Okay, then I will forward that. Yes, I will, because the talking point sheet I think was really helpful. So I will forward that. Yep. I never know what emails go to everybody or not, so I will forward that. It just came today. Yeah. There was an earlier email from them, and then they sent another one today that had, and the talking points, I think, they're good for us just to have in general in talking with anybody in the community if they ask what's going on. They did a good job, I think, with them. Are we ready to shift away from the budget? Okay, so a couple other pieces of legislation that I just want to give an update on. So House Bill 103 is the bill that would establish the Ohio Social Studies Standards Task Force to develop a new social studies academic standards based on American birthright curriculum. That, if you'll remember, is a piece of legislation that is in the House Primary and Secondary Committee. It had its 5th hearing this week. Also this week in committee on a party line vote, they approved an amendment that would give the task force 6 months to issue a report if the legislation goes through. And I just wanted to note that the chair of the committee, Chair Byrd, in his remarks, he mentioned that he had requested that Ohio Department of Education do a comparison between the American birthright curriculum and current social studies standards. I was listening to that committee, so I followed up with our state representative, Lightbody, who happens to serve on House Primary and Secondary, and I asked if she could share that document with me. I have shared it with all of you. There are a lot of differences between our current social studies curriculum and the American birthright curriculum. That is a piece of legislation that we talked about a couple times and agreed that we would like to consider a resolution in opposition to. So Mrs. Coates is working on that resolution. House Bill 171 is a piece of legislation that would update model curriculum for K-12 social studies to include age-appropriate instruction on migration experiences of a wide variety of communities. That's a piece of legislation that we actually heard from an alum on at our last regular board meeting. A graduate named Ariana Kalawala she is, I think, in her 2nd year in college, and has been working on this legislation actually with our state representative, Mary Lightbody. Just wanted to update that it was referred to House Primary and Secondary on May 23rd. And that is a resolution that Mrs. Mooring is taking lead on, or that is a piece of legislation that we talked about passing a resolution in support of, on a resolution for. Okay, then we talked about passing a resolution in opposition to 3 pieces of legislation: House Bill 6, House Bill 8, and House Bill 183. Two of those pieces of legislation have had some movement since our last regular meeting, so I just wanted to update. House Bill 6 is a piece of legislation that would prohibit a school district from knowingly permitting a student who was identified as male at birth from participating on a team designated as a, quote, girls' team, regardless of OSHAA policy. That bill was added into a different piece, or it was added into House Bill 68 yesterday. I just wanted everybody to know where that is just procedurally. And then another piece of legislation, House Bill 8, that is the bill that would require public schools to adopt a policy on parental notification on student health and well-being and instructional materials. Now, instead of sexual content, they have changed it to calling it sexuality content. So that bill was modified on June 13th, whatever day of the week that was this week. Tuesday, thank you. They're defining sexuality content as any, quote, any oral or written instruction, presentation, image, or description of sexual concepts or gender ideology, which is a pretty broad definition. I'm not sure exactly what that means. That language was adopted on Tuesday. It was also voted out of the House Primary and Secondary Committee, again on a party line vote on Tuesday. It was sent to the full House floor, but apparently the bill sponsor was out of town, so the Speaker of the House made a decision to hold that for a full floor vote. It'll be next week is what I'm being told. So like I said, House Bill 6, House Bill 8, House Bill 183, we talked about passing a resolution in opposition to those pieces of legislation on the basis that we think that they usurp the local control of locally elected school boards, and Mr. Manley is working on that resolution. I think that's it for tonight. I always feel bad because I feel like my legislative updates are so long. I did say last month, I do feel bad, but at the same time, I don't ever remember a time in serving on school board where there has been so very much legislation that impacts public school. I don't know, I mean, I feel bad that it takes up a lot of our time, but that's not any of our faults that it's taking up our time. Okay. So we have a report from, any other questions?
All right, thank you. So I'm on the board at Eastland Fairfield, and want to say that, I had a great time going to the graduations. They do a lot of graduations, I'm learning. So I went, and I went to the Fairfield graduation, then I went to the Eastland graduation, and then I went to the satellite graduation, and I had a great time. It was just amazing seeing all the different districts. It was just so beautiful. All the different districts together with all the families together, celebrating and honoring all their accomplishments and their hard work. Yeah, it was really, really special. And then I'm learning there's even more. They have a police graduation for their police program, and the adult workforce, of course. And so those are really great too. Trivia is that they used to have 16 different graduations. So they laughed about that. That's crazy. I told them, you're crazy. Let's see. Yeah, that was funny, joking with him. So anyway, we're in transition over there. Shelley Groves is stepping up as the new superintendent, and so Dr. Miller is, winding things down, and she gave a great presentation at our last meeting about all their accomplishments and, setting the standards and the pillars of success that they use as their guides and model, along with the strategic planning that they implement. So, it's just inspirational to see all the growth and, the changes with the times in the programming. They did also have recently their summer school for middle schoolers, and that was well attended, 400 students, participation with 15 of the 16 partner districts. So that, sounds like a lot of fun was had by them. And that's the end of my report, so thank you.
Mr. Manley. Next, we have an update from Gahanna Jefferson Education Foundation from Mrs. Coates.
Thank you. So we meet quarterly, and we had this quarter's meeting. Tracy and I attended, Dr. Deagle and I attended on Monday, and they did an election of officers. So the new officers are President Michael Heller, Vice President DeWitt Harrell, Treasurer Mike Fritz, and Secretary Julie Fire. So big congratulations to our new elected officials there. They are right now working hard on the Gear Gardens to get the construction planning and budgeting complete. And they asked me to put a plug in. They always appreciate any volunteers with construction experience. So if you know any or anyone who's out there listening, please contact Gahanna Jefferson Education Foundation. And they planted 200 Christmas trees. They are rotating crops, so pumpkins were last year, will be potatoes this year. So that's very exciting. The other thing that they do need help with is, the BUTS scholarship recipients have mentors. So the Gail and Frances McWhort BUTS scholarship is for students who are in foster care or who come from fragile family backgrounds. And so the kind of unique aspect of the scholarship, it's renewable each year as long as they're in good standing with their college program of study. The scholarship can be used for a 4-year degree, 2-year, or a trade certified program. The foundation provides that mentor, and so they need some mentors that could help these students during the year. They provide guidance for the students as they navigate through that next phase of education, and like living arrangements, help them fill out all the paperwork for if they're going on to those colleges, and really also act as like motivators for them. So if anyone is interested, please reach out. It looks like it might be free. Yeah, I think it's free, but don't hold me to it. And then since the inception of the program in 2015, I thought this was interesting that GJEF has awarded $179,500 and is mentoring 12 students for the school year of 2022-23. So I just think that is an incredible, yeah. And then some save the dates that are important for us to know. The stadium grand opening is going to be Friday, September 1st. So super excited about that. Hall of Fame and Cornerstone Awards will be December 8th. And new this year, it's going to be during one of our basketball games. So students can really, and other members of our community can really hear the inspiring stories from those award recipients. And also Lincoln Live is going to do videos on the recipients as well. And then the Gahanna Gala will be February 24th, 2024 at Jefferson Country Club. Again, 20th anniversary of the gala. So super exciting there. Oh, I don't know. I don't think that was shared. They might, maybe they're still working on it. Do you know something? Oh, I thought this early. Okay. And they're working on the dates. There's tentative dates, but I don't want to share them yet until they're final for the Monster Dash, the fall fundraiser, and then the Veterans Day Memorial Ceremony. So once they're finalized, I'll share those with everyone.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. I should have said you have also a student learning
Oh.
and achievement report, so
Yep.
it's still you.
Yes, I do. Wait, I'm waiting for my notes to pop up for this one. Okay. So two things came through from OSBA, Ohio School Board Association, that I thought would be good for us to be aware of. There's a history teacher out of California that created an educational app called High Five, the number 5 Wizard, so High Five Wizard, for students. It's for free for students to take advanced placement quizzes, practice quizzes, to help them pass the AP exams. So the lessons are in U.S. history, government and politics, world history, English, psychology, and statistics. So I thought that was just good for us to be aware of. I wish they had that with my kids so that they could practice. And then another thing that came through that I thought was really valuable was there is a not-for-profit out of Minnesota called Live More, Screen Less that focuses on helping students and schools with digital well-being. And so I remembered back to when we had the forum, and Chief Spence talked about how one thing parents, we got a question from the audience, parents asked how they could help with the team behavior we were seeing, and Chief Spence said that really watching those digital screens, monitoring it, decreasing it was important. And so I thought that this not-for-profit was super helpful. I looked at their website. They have training, but they also have for free a really robust resource library, including policies around digital screens for schools, but then also tips for parents on how to monitor that and decrease it. So it's not getting rid of it. I'm sorry, livemorescreenless.org is their website. So it's not about getting rid of it. I think like digital is with us, but it's really being focused on that digital well-being.
Mrs. Coates. Last, we've got a report from Mrs. Horn, Gehenna Parks and Rec.
We met last night with Parks and Rec, and just a few quick updates. Part of the master plan for Gehenna Parks has been presented. Most of it got fed into the capital improvement plan for the city, which I think the first introduction of that was on Monday night. There actually is going to be a town hall at City Hall next Wednesday at 6 for anybody that's interested in hearing about how issue $12 are being proposed to be allocated for the city, which I think is important for all of us. And then a master plan further update for Parks and Rec will be on Monday, July 10th. There's always seems to be lots of construction going on in Gehenna, so it's good news that there's more work being done on the mountain bike trail at Academy Park, which that park gets a lot of use with all of the baseball fields and potentially asphalt work that will be done in 2024. Woodside Green is getting a new parking lot this fall. Ambassador Commons, which is over on the west side of Gehenna, they're getting their playground redone. And then Trap Park, which is a little neighborhood park, is still getting some revamping from work that they did. The other important thing for us that impacts us is the Link to Literacy, which is the program that they're trying to connect from Creekside to the library and from Hamilton Road to the library. How it impacts us, it's our property as well as the library, the apartments, and then Gatsby's. The other 3 letters of intent have been received by Gehenna Parks and Rec, so Dr. Deagle and I are working on ours, and we will have that to share with you guys that hopefully we can vote on our letter of intent on the 29th meeting that we have, the special meeting for the end of the year. And that will play well into the grant application process for that program with ODNR that the city is working on. And I think that's it. Any questions?
Mrs. Horn, can you remind me the timing of the grant application? I don't remember when.
So they already applied, but
Okay.
with part of that process is you can follow up with additional information.
Okay.
That additional information is due by July 1st, so
Okay.
it fits in well with that.
Okay.
So, great. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. I don't have any public participation slips, none from you either? Okay, so there's no public participation comments tonight. So we're on adoption of the agenda. Are there any recommended changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Madam President, thank you. For Human Resources, letter I, number 4, Travis Workman, that contract should read that it will end on June 30th of 2023. And then I'll just draw your attention to I-8, where you will see Travis loaded for a contract for the next year. So this is just to get us through this year, and then he will be part of the classified hiring list that you see on I-8. And just a reminder that administrative professionals are different than administrators. Administrative professionals are classified staff that are exempt staff.
Oh, is there a motion to modify the agenda as recommended by Superintendent Eagle?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Any discussion about that? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Mooring,
Yes.
Mrs. Coates,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion then to adopt the agenda as modified? Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second?
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Manley. Any discussion? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
There we go. All right, Mrs. Mooring,
Yes.
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 I threw you off. We amend one, I go right back to the same one, just so it doesn't
Maybe
throw.
you need a light
So.
system.
Motion
Okay.
carried.
We are on to Superintendent's report. Dr. Deagle?
So much. I'd like to begin tonight by just congratulating our preschool one more time. That is such an exceptional program at both Goshen Lane and here at Clark Hall, which they have exceptional leadership with Missy and with Sue as their director. Their staff is incredible also. And that is, it's a team effort, as you know, in preschool, because you have highly qualified teachers and highly qualified educational aides and extra supports such as instructors, multiple people, school psychologists that all support our students in the preschool, and we're just so proud of them. It's a huge honor to be a 5-star. We're also really pleased that we have 80 staff this summer who have elected to participate in our Journey to Learning program, 80 staff, and we are serving 700 students in that program, and that is preschool, elementary, and high school level, and such things as support for reading and math, STEM programming, some journaling experiences, singing, and fitness. So a wide range of whole child activities taking place in Journey to Learning. We also will be proud to bring our recent state champions to our board meeting next month. They tonight are at the Columbus Dispatch Central Ohio Awards Banquet. Brandon Carpico was a tennis state champion. I was able to see the semifinal match. Amazing. I think we're going to see a lot more of him when he goes to Ohio State next year and beyond. Our girls track team, after many weather delays, many weather delays, our girls track team won the state championship again. So back-to-back state champions with an extraordinarily humble coach who is the truest definition of a servant leader, and we are just so appreciative that he has been with us for so many years.
look forward to welcoming them next month. And our boys 4x2 team are also state champions. We had a very successful community coffee again. I really love these events, and we would like to thank Ted Hortons for hosting us. We had a great turnout and a wide range of conversation topics. So thank you to Mr. Manley and to Mrs. Mooring for participating in the conversation. I will be sending out to you, Eric and I are working together to send out our next 5 community coffees, and we will ask for you to sign up for those for the future. I think our next one is August 30th. Excuse me. We're also excited to participate in the 4th of July parade this summer, and we are very fortunate that our marching lions have agreed to take us on. So,
We don't have to play though.
no, we don't have to play. Maybe some routines, so we will line up with them. I'll have details in an email to you tomorrow, but we are so excited to march with them and to support them and see our community in the 4th of July parade. Speaking of our marching lions, though, I just learned that they received an invitation from the Ohio State University Marching Band to participate in a skull session this fall. And so they will be traveling down to perform alongside Thibodeau. We've had a busy few weeks actually, because as you know, once our students head out for the summer, we engage in our learning and planning for next year. And we had a really fabulous 2 days this week for our administrative summer retreat, thanks to some incredible planning with Jill and the collaboration of our central office administrators who planned and delivered professional learning for our administrators. So administrators could come and go based on the sessions that most spoke to them or they felt they wanted to hear more about. The topics included a presentation from GPD on drug and online behavior for our teens so that we can stay as current as possible on the trends there. A K-5 Bridges Number Corners talk, communication presentation by Eric and Judy, Communications for Leaders. Tia had us start to learn what Tableau can do for data visualization as a district. Shay did a great job on a human resource coaching and direction presentation. We had tech monitoring and restriction option for students. Developing resilience was a session. Best practices for homeless foster place and adjudicated youth with Jen Korn. What to look for when serving as a district rep for IEP meetings was presented by Sue. And then we also received a legal update from our partners at Bricker, which was well attended. So again, thank you, Jill, for planning that and creating that really wonderful space for our administrators to learn for 2 days. Our last thing I have tonight is our strategic plan has moved from the survey phase to now the listening phase. I know many of you have participated in that. And as soon as we get all of that data in, the firm does, we will start to look at that data, and this fall we will move into our next step of informing our future strategic plan. So we're away from the survey now and into the listening sessions. Thank you.
You, Dr. Deagle. Oh, now it's really loud. Next, we have a report from our treasurer, Mr. Gooding.
I was gonna, speakers here. Thank you. Tuesday night, we had the Finance and Facilities Committee, which was mentioned. Over 50.9 million at the general fund. Just under 76,000. Just over $686,000 with an ending cash balance in that fund of 4.4 million. On the construction fund, I'm always happy to report that we received I'm able to say this one specifically because it's such a great number. $214,281.97 in interest earnings. That's fantastic from where we were when we started the project a couple years ago. At the same time, we spent $3.2 million in expenditures with an ending cash balance of just over $198 million. On the general fund side, we go through the variances on a monthly basis. Again, boring information, but great information. The fact that revenue is up 1.31%, expenses are under 1.62%, and overall cash is up $3 million. It's the right trends where we want that to be. We had some great conversation and questions about some details of some of the transactions and what was driving some of those. I know there was one piece that we were to follow up on to a question that Mrs. Horn had. It was a $610,000 expense in the PI fund. The reason it caught me off guard is that it was paid early. It was the debt payment for the COPS issue, which was due on 6/1, but it got processed at the end of May. So that's what that expense was for. It was the interest payment on that, on the COPS issue in the PI fund for $610,056.25. Some other things that we talked about in there were some changes, some accounting corrections that were processed for capital outlay, and a little bit of the confusion is when we talk about when we focus on the monthly variance report, that is all specific to the general fund and not all funds. So what we saw in there was a negative month-to-date expenditure for capital outlay, and what that was is an accounting correction that was moving expenses that were charged to the ESSER grant, the CARES Act, the funding that we got for COVID. So what showed as a negative expense in the general fund side was offset on the grant side, but in that report you didn't see it because it only represented the general fund component of that. What else exciting did we have? The last committee meeting of the fiscal year, and it's just a crazy time. So to get through that in a short meeting was much needed, so that we could get back to work on getting the books closed for June 30th. The other thing that's on for tonight, obviously those financial reports that were presented there, we do have our donations, which we're always extremely appreciative to any and all members of our community and those outside of our community that contribute to our students' needs. We have $5,684.19 in donations that we would like to recognize this evening as well. I'll take any questions anyone has.
Any questions? Okay. There are 2 items for action under financial business. Is there a motion to approve financial business item G3, which is items G1 through G2? Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Any additional discussion about these items? Okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Votes. Mrs. Piccolo-Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Great.
We are on letter H, Assistant Superintendent. Item number 1 is Assistant Superintendent's report. Mrs. Elliott, hopefully that microphone is working.
Thank you. Good evening. Dr. Deagle spoke a little bit about our administrative professional development sessions, and I just wanted to start with a quick note about our administrative retreat. So we had a great day connecting last week and reflecting on the school year, taking a look at data, setting the stage for next year with our full administrative team. It's always a nice time to get together after the hustle and bustle of the year has kind of slowed down, and energy is high with administrators, minds are settled, so that was a very nice time together last week. Also wanted to give an update on the alternative school I had previously shared about. We've solidified our location, and we'll be partnering with Mifflin Township. We'll be utilizing the building just to the left or to the east of the Mifflin Township Fire Building on Rocky Fork Boulevard, so we're grateful for that partnership. There are renovations being done to that building to help prepare for our students and staff. There's a chance that we will start the programming on site and then transition. We're grateful for that partnership with Chief Kauser. the chair of Mifflin Township Trustees, Lynn Stewart, and Vice Chair Angelo and Trustee Kevner. So we're grateful for that partnership. Our administrators have started connecting with families. We are moving forward with our self-paced learning program in Avado, so definitely excited about that programming opportunity for our students next year. I wanted to highlight a few items before you on the agenda this evening. We do have one overnight trip for our boys soccer team. You'll also find a 3-year agreement with the Schottenstein Center. We always host a wonderful graduation ceremony, and it's important to lock in that venue for several years in advance. So we were just able to work out that new agreement. We also have software purchases for the 23-24 school year funded with ESSER dollars, as well as a math curriculum purchase for the last year of investigations at the elementary level. If you remember, we have a phased-in approach for our new math curriculum. We will transition to the new number corners portion of the new curriculum, but we'll have our last year with investigations, so that is that piece. And then lastly, in this section, we have student handbooks before you this evening. We are asking you to approve the handbooks this year and every year moving forward so that we have them codified and they are enforceable as an extension of board policy. In the past, we've had a district template, and then each building has added on their building-specific components. This year, we collaborated and consolidated, so that was nice, and have 3 handbooks before you, one for the elementary schools, one for the 3 middle schools, and then one for the high school. Just a few items in the handbooks to draw your attention to. We have created consistent meal and recess lengths at the elementary level. We always get a lot of questions about that, so you'll notice that piece. We have agreed upon cell phone policies in our secondary buildings, the middle schools and high school, and we'll be ironing out some of those details about the enforcement of that. But we are excited to have an opportunity to, manage screen time and focus in on learning. We also have updated parking expectations that extends to our new alternative parking sites that we will have in place in the future for the high school. We have updated policies, so any policies that have been updated are now reflected, and we were also able to condense down. We had pages and pages worth of policies in the past, so that was nice to be able to shorten them. I had previously communicated the elementary reporting period consolidation, or actually not consolidation, but change to quarters, so that's reflected. And then we also have some school lunch language that's broad enough to allow us to continue to have discussions with the board about solutions for addressing our negative balance concerns at nearly $87,000. So we want to, have plans in place to support students and families that have a negative lunch balance, but still allow us the opportunity to discuss the best path forward, which you all will discuss at the board retreat, and then put into administrative guidelines. That's all I have for this section. I do have a couple things for the human resources section next.
Elliot, appreciate, I don't know if anyone has questions for Mrs. Elliott before okay, then I'll hold my comments. Go ahead, Mrs. Mooring.
I didn't see the Jerome Schottenstein, are we still the first graduation? 9:30, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Nice to have the certainty that is all in place for the next 3 years. Yeah. And I was just going to say thank you for the explanation of the changes with the handbooks. From my perspective of someone who has been on the board, it's nice to see the standardization across the different levels. Those are the kind of questions they come to you all the time. So it'll be really interesting to hear the details of the cell phone enforcement policy. I mean, that was an issue that has been discussed a number of times, but most recently in a very public way at our forum related to youth. So it'll be really interesting to see how that all works out. I think it is wonderful for the district that administrators were able to get onto the same page with that. I know that that's not an easy thing to, I guess, give up that autonomy of managing a building, but I think it'll be good for the kids as they all move into one building at the high school to have similar practices and expectations with that. So thank you for all of that work, not just to you, but for all of the administrators who worked to do all of that. Any additional questions or comments? Okay, is there a motion?
President,
Oh,
I
go
would
ahead.
also just like to add that now going forward, since you all will have approved the handbooks, we will have red line version for you each year so you can see where the edits and changes are made.
Wonderful. It was a lot to digest. Even though, I mean, as a parent, I read those handbooks every year. It's still, without seeing a marked up version, that was a lot to digest. But much easier given that it's just 3 instead of 11 of them, I think is what we had before maybe. So is there a motion then to approve, let's see, letter H8, which is educational people, programs, and service items, H2 through H7.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Any additional discussion or questions about these items? Excuse me. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Yes.
Mr. Manley? Yes. Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Yes.
We are on human resources, and I think, Mrs. Elliott, you had some comments to make before we get to those items.
Thank you. So as you can see, the Human Resources Department continues to be very busy, and they are doing a fantastic job filling our positions. You'll notice some resignations on the agenda this evening, some individuals moving on from us, also a few taking new positions within the organization, and notably in leadership roles. I am going to highlight one of those recommendations. We're excited to have before you tonight the recommendation for Mrs. Keisha Whitfield, who is with us this evening. Keisha has been a highly regarded GJPS intervention specialist in the district for several years. She is a staunch advocate for kids, very dedicated and forward-thinking educator, committed to equity and inclusion, and I have to add a ray of sunshine in the day for anyone that gets to interact with her. So we are extremely happy to recommend Mrs. Whitfield for hire as an assistant principal at Lincoln High School. And then lastly, just a note that we have, of course, several certificated, classified staff members as well as substitutes on the agenda before you. We did have a classified job fair today, and so several administrators were here at Clark Hall, meeting candidates, interviewing on the spot, so definitely looking forward to having more hires ahead of you in future meetings, but a lot of action in the Human Resources Department.
Thank you, Mrs. Elliott. Is there a motion to approve item number I-42? That's how long I had to scroll through that list, which is items I-2 through I-41.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. Any questions? Go ahead.
I'd like to say great job to Keisha. I think one of the greatest things about seeing people in different buildings is seeing them be able to progress within the district. And so I know that a lot of the kids from Jefferson will be very happy to see you at the high school, which I think is great. And you are a ray of sunshine, so I think that's just remarkable. And then we had a couple other people within the district that were able to move into positions for Cliff. So I think that just speaks a lot to the leadership, and it's great to see people be able to move into different positions and to keep good staff. So good to see.
Yep. I think we've got two others that are moving into new roles. Mr. Hawk, who is moving from Middle School South over to operations, and Mr. Workman, who is moving into a different position within the transportation department. Yeah, it is wonderful when we have leaders in our district who are able to move and take on increasing responsibility. Did you have a question, Mrs. Mooring? No? Oh, I thought you did before I called on Mrs. Horn. Any other questions? I just want to just reiterate the point that Mrs. Reed made, and I know you made it too. A lot of people, I feel like one of the most common questions that I get is, really, people work in the summer? And actually, both from operations and HR and probably everywhere that feeds into central office, it's actually a really busy time of year in the summer in the district. So thank you to all of the staff who continues to work so that we can serve students to our best ability during the school year. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll?
Mr. Manley? Mrs. Piccolo-Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much to all of you for being here. You are welcome to go. Yeah. Go celebrate. We are on Chief Operating Officer, so I am going to turn it over to Mr. Hetzel for a report.
Good evening, President Piccolo-Antonio and members of the board. Tonight I wanted to follow up at least out of the gates with recognizing Dwayne Hawk for the position of Operations Coordinator. He has a long-standing history in the district with experience in custodial maintenance and in a leadership role as a former facilitator in the maintenance department. He's highly reputable, highly respected within the district amongst his peers and administration, and that really was very pronounced in the process as we selected him for the position. We think he'll be a very strong building connector. We see that as something very, very important as far as all the work we're doing at CO, all of the vast projects going on, and then the ongoing needs that we know we have at the buildings. I think he'll bring value to our small and mid-sized projects, being able to see them through and stay on top of them, whether we do them in-house or we have a contractor doing the work. And then I think he'll support an orderly and efficient response to needs, and I think that's what we want to stay on top of. So we're excited about that. Also, Travis Workman, as an experienced driver, and he has done a lot of work in supporting the office and lots of our routing and dispatching needs as we've had gaps and transitions and things like that going on. We are moving forward with a routing software upgrade that he'll play an instrumental role in, not just with being able to understand the technology to support Krista and Tracy over in that department, but also be able to help with the efficiencies having run all these routes and understand how things are working out in the field. So we're very excited about that. Before I talk about the items on the agenda tonight, to stick with the theme of just kind of evaluating areas in the district as I've been walking through them, joining the team, spent a little bit of time looking at some of our procurement practices and how we're purchasing things and seeing how we can find value. So we have really been evaluating our account status with purchasing cooperatives. So we've got the state of Ohio, we have Meta, various purchasing groups that grant us access to what I would consider to be market pricing on things so that we can see where we stand. Scott and I also met with Amazon and their enterprise services to see if they can provide opportunities for us to build a purchasing system that allows us to filter for local vendors, minority-owned vendors, building RFPs that can give us quotes, reduce delivery charges, and have data that supports that. So we're trying to hit it on all sides. We know we have our tried and true public entity support in purchasing, but we know that the private enterprises can add some value as we look through their lens as well. So we were beginning to take a look at that and see how that might work for the district. And with possibility of it even tying into our purchasing system, which could be really efficient for us to manage. One other real positive thing is we were, through our partnership with the YWCA, they are in our elementary schools doing care after school programming, but they awarded each elementary a $5,000 grant to purchase playground equipment. So we've received those funds, and we're working with the buildings to place some improvement, whether it's an instrument out on the playground that's a very inclusive play piece, or the pathways, and we're looking at all different kinds of things. But I think that's a real positive interaction with them, and they're a great partner with us. In regard to board agenda items tonight, Peace Lutheran Church has really stepped up to help us with our parking needs for the high school, and we have a common understanding of what that relationship is going to look like. So the resolution is going to allow us to complete a negotiation with them. Basically, a licensing agreement is what it's called, but it'll allow us to also add them as an additional insured on our policy and just kind of cover all of our bases as far as that goes. So we're real excited to work with them on that. You'll also see our insurance renewal. It is an increase, and we had talked before about how we approach this renewal. We've been a member of the Ohio School Plan, which is a self-insured property casualty insurance program. It's done a very good job for us. In this case, we've been hit with an increase due to, it's a slight rate increase on how they apply their rates to our property of about 5%. However, our property was evaluated, so we were on the other side of that this time. And we had 3 independent valuation private companies do it, and we had about a 27% increase in our property values. The lowest evaluation was just over 70 million more, and in one case they had us at 100+ million more in overall value. So we applied an increased rate to an increased value. We got that increase, but I did mention to them, be prepared for next year. So we're going to be going to the market. We'll be evaluating our coverages and market opportunities to see if we can find savings. You also see a copy machine on there with Blue Technologies. They are kind of our longstanding copier service provider. We purchased Konica Minolta copiers. They were leased. We're terminating a 5-year lease with them. So Konica Minolta sells through Blue. They're a dealership. And then Blue services them at a cost per copy. That is going to be terming in September, so I'll have a full review. Matt Blackwell and I have been looking at all of our copier options. We've been talking to different dealers, different manufacturers, trying to see what our pricing looks like. In this case, this is the large production machine that's at the high school used for the gear program. So it runs a lot of color copies and things of that nature. And we got a renewal price from them that was, for black and white copies, was about 1.6 times more than what we currently pay, and our colored copies were going to be about 3 times more on a new service contract, because it's a 2015 machine, so it's outdated. We had 11 service calls this past school year, so we worked on a replacement for that, and that item on there represents the replacement. So we're buying the equipment, and that also includes the service cost, the cost per copy. And that combination is still lower than what the renewal with them just servicing an old machine. So it's about a 6.5% cost reduction versus keeping what we have right now. So with your approval tonight, that was the condition on the form that I told them we wanted to get lead time on buying it so they could order it and it come in after tonight, then they'll proceed with getting the equipment. That's what that represents. We have permanent lighting going on at Blacklick Athletics. That's exciting as well. Musco is the same company we're using at the stadium. They are a leader in the field, and they've done a good job of designing a permanent solution out there. With tonight, we'll be able to, they plan to mobilize in August, so pretty quickly. So we're hoping that we could have that in place this fall. We have a temporary arrangement with them. We evaluated the temporary lighting to see if could this stay, could we get a deal on this, but it was a little bit older equipment, and it probably wasn't worth the investment. But they're allowing us to keep them during the transition so that we have the lighting no matter what, because I think we have some tournaments and things like that that may be going on. So we have that in place. And finally, you'll see an amendment on there related to the scoreboard work. And the reason for that is the board approval on the scoreboard that's installed. First off, it was district purchased, so it was an owner-provided item on the construction project. And it said not to exceed. And as part of that installation, they ran into water underground that they had to reinforce. And so these are for foundations so that they could proceed with that. We just recently were digging the detention pond over there where the tennis courts were. We found bad soils there, very, very wet. So that's kind of that's the GOPers, that's the same theme that we're running across with the unforeseen conditions. But everything else is moving forward on time, very timely fashion, and we're feeling good about it. But this is probably our biggest challenge, and it doesn't mean we won't have a great foundation. It just means that this seems to present itself every once in a while. So.
In California, these water discoveries would be amazingly revenue producing, right?
They would.
For Mr. Hetzel? Okay. Is there a motion for approval of items J2 through J6? Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Mrs. Coates. Any additional discussion or questions about any of the items? Okay. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring? Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We are on general business of the board, and there is one item for action, which is a second reading of a policy. It looks like the first, so the policy is PO 8462, which is student abuse and neglect. We had a first reading of the policy on May 16th. And according to the practice that we put in place for this calendar year, we are doing 2 reads of policies, so 2 regular board meetings, 2 opportunities for anyone who has any public comment about any of the recommended policy changes. This is the second reading of this policy. So anything you want to say, Dr. Deagle, before I ask for a motion?
Received no additional questions, so we should be all set.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to approve item K2, which is approval of general business item K1?
Make a motion.
Thanks, Mr. Manley. Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Any additional discussion about this policy, the recommended policy change? Okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Mooring? Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn? Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio? Motion carried.
Thank you. Is there a motion to go into executive session pursuant to revised code 12122G5 for the purpose of discussing matters required to be kept confidential by federal law, rules, or state statutes? Sorry, I'm getting tired.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. I guess for anyone who may be watching, I don't think there's anyone here with us, but for anyone who may be watching the live stream, when we go into executive session, the live streaming will stop. The board goes into a separate location. We will be coming back into open public session, not to the live stream, but back into open public session in person after we're out of executive session. But the only board action we will be taking is to adjourn the meeting. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Coates? Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Motion carried.
It is 7:50 p.m., so we'll take just a couple-minute recess, and then we will go into executive session. Thanks. And Ron, you